my screen now. Okay. And so we'll be talking about web-based visualization. More particularly, the tool we'll be talking about is D3. So D3 is a library that works in conjunction with HTML, which is widely used to build web pages. D3 gives you the ability to do dynamic changes to the website, and we'll be looking and exploring all of that. So as I mentioned, D3 is, well, D3 is an acronym for data-driven documents. So D3 is based on JavaScript, and it allows you to gives you tools to manipulate data and data sets, data files. And in doing so, you can do dynamic visualization on a website and in web pages. It's a very powerful tool. Here you can read up on you know, where D3 is used, where some of the data sets that we'll be looking at, and I'll be giving more details as we move forward. So to start, we'll be looking at basic website building. So before actually diving into D3, we have to start by getting some knowledge about HTML, which is a language used for building web pages. And then we're going to look at something called SVG, which is, you can look at it as an extension of HTML. It allows you to more easily build graphics. And then we'll be looking at the library and working with the actual D3 library to do dynamic changes to the web pages. So I invite you all to download these slides at the link you see here. You will need the slides for instructions, as there's a couple of things we need to do before we actually get into the website building. So please take some time to download this PDF right now if you haven't currently done so. Okay.
Can you paste that in the just in the chat, please?
Sure.
Sorry, just thanks.
Okay. All right, super. So moving forward, so a few things I would like you to do before we get started is we need an environment to run a web page on your computer. We'll be using Atom, and you can download it very quickly here at the link here. We'll put that in the chat as well, so you can access the download. I'll give you a few minutes to do that.
I'm not sure, but maybe just we were asked to do that before the seminar. I'm not sure if everybody did, but maybe to save time if everybody has already done that.
Okay, great. Yeah, I'll be okay. So I'll move forward. If anybody has any issues, please feel free to either raise your hand or send a note in the chat. So after installing Atom, you would want to have installed to go under the File and Settings menu to install the live server package. And once that's installed, then you will be ready to run a web page from your favorite browser. Any of the most popular ones will work. works very well, so you shouldn't have any problem doing so. So hopefully everyone has done that and they're ready to go. If you open up Atom, this is what you should see. Well, you wouldn't see the files yet, but I mean, you will see this a gray background. So what it looks like is it allows you to create files, and we'll be doing so as we move forward through the workshop. Index.html is the core or the main file that your web server looks for when you start it. That's the first file it'll look for. And then input.js is where you would have your JavaScript or D3 instructions. So at a minimum for this workshop, you would need both of these files. And on the screen here, you see an example of what D3 would look like. We'll go through this again, but kind of gives you an idea of what it is. If you've already programmed with JavaScript, then this will look very familiar to you. If not, then this is a great way to get acquainted with it, because JavaScript is a very good language to use and is used widely across many, if not most, websites out there. So starting a new project, let's go ahead and do so. So what you want to do is on your computer, you want to start by creating a folder, and that will be your working folder for these workshops. Like you could call it D3 workshop, for example. And then in D3, okay, which I will show you here. So once you open up D3, you're going to see the folder you created. Okay, and in my case, I created one called D3_viz. So if this is what you see, then you're ready to move forward. You may have a welcome tab or a welcome page, those are just instructions. You can keep it there or close it by clicking on the little X. When you go onto at the top, you click on the little X and it'll close that tab. Okay, so basic web pages. HTML, it stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And it is the basic language of any website. It uses a structure called XML, which is also used for data structures, but this is the structure HTML uses, and it provides the structure and text, well, as I said, for web pages. So here's an example of what it looks like. It's all tags. So every time we have a line or an instruction set, or we want HTML to do something, we tell it via a tag. Usually there's an opening tag. For example, if we look at the body tag, which is where the body of our HTML page rests, this is the body tag. You would have all your instructions inside of it, and then you close the body tag by putting a /. And this is pretty typical of all the tags, whether you're doing a heading, like H1 here is a heading, you close the heading with /H1, a div, which allows you to divide up your page into areas. And then you also have P, which is for paragraphs when you're doing text. We'll explore those a bit too throughout the workshop. So let's create our first page. So we open up Atom. You will want to go to File and then New File, which will give you an Untitled tab. And then if you do Save, Control S, it'll ask you the file you want to save, and you want to put index.html and save. At the top of your bar, you're going to see the name of your file. And so this tab represents everything that's in the index.html file. Okay. Okay, so if we go ahead and type or insert this information here, we can give you a few seconds to do that. Just type it in. And by the way, uppercase or lowercase for the tags, it doesn't matter. You can use either or. All right. Okay, so once you have this and you save your file, if you go to packages at the top, you should see Atom Live Server that you installed. That's the package you installed, and you start the server. And what that should do is open up a web page that shows what you've created. Okay, so you should be able to open up, or it should automatically open up the window in your browser. And then you should see just simple text, hello world. Okay, so hopefully everybody can see that. Fairly straightforward. So what do we have here? What is this code made up of? So doc type is, well, it's the document type. So we're basically, it's just a declaration. It's to tell HTML what type of page we're generating here. The HTML tag is where the HTML code goes. So it's possible in a file to mix HTML with other languages. And here we're simply saying, we're going to be writing some HTML code between my HTML open and close tags. The head is a header. So on a web page, you typically have like a header and then a title, which goes at the top of your web page. So if you look at your site, or what we've done so far, the web page we built, you'll notice that the title appears here in the tab that we created where the web page was opened. So if you don't put title, you won't see anything there. But here, because we did, it comes up at that's the name of our tab. So the title is the name of the tab. The body is where the text goes. Any text, or if we have div tags, in the div tag you might have text and images, pictures, anything, graphs, and that typically would all go within the body of the web page. And here, P, as I mentioned earlier, it's a paragraph. So we're just saying, that we have a paragraph defined. We're writing hello world in there. Okay. And it's important to note that you always want to close those tags, because if you don't, HTML won't give you an error message. It'll just pretty much do exactly what you tell it to. So without putting closing tags, you'll get unusual formatting. Text could be everywhere, images could be misplaced. When that happens, when it's unexpected, it's a good sign that the closing tag is either incorrect or missing altogether. Okay. So let's go ahead and make a change to our web page by adding another line of text under our P, another paragraph. Okay. Make sure you save the file. And when you save the file, you should it'll automatically come up in your web page. You don't need to refresh the web page. At least you shouldn't have to. The Atom web server is very good at just making this all real time. So the minute you save the file, it comes up on the screen on your web page. And so this is what you should see now. All right. Everyone's good so far? Good. Okay. Okay, great. Another thing to know about websites is, okay, so what we've done so far, it's just the raw, putting some text in a raw form, if you like, on the page. But we want web pages to look great. We want it to look presentable, very readable, pleasant to the eye. How we do that is through CSS, cascading style sheets. And it basically allows us to assign parameters to the HTML code that tells it, how it should look. So we'll do an example of that. So we create a new file. Again, we go to our Atom environment. We go to File, create a new file, and then we save. And this time, we want to call it style.css. Style.css is a name that you'll find on almost every website out there. It's kind of a standard name. You can actually call it whatever you want, but style.css is very common out there for styling web pages. And within style.css, as I mentioned, it's really about how it looks and how the information gets presented. So it's about the colors, the sizes, and also the location of the elements. So for example, here, let's try this. So in your style.css, what we're going to do is we're going to assign background color as light blue to the body. And we're going to assign to the paragraphs the color red. Okay, a couple of things in CSS is the wording is like color is COLOUR. Just this is the US way of spelling color, so just be aware of that. And also the semicolon at the end of the line is very important. Without it, it won't work. And so it's important to do that. So if you save the file, as I mentioned, we assigned colors to our web page. And if we go to the website, we have one more thing to do before this will work. We have to tell HTML. So we go to our HTML file tab, and we have to tell HTML, is there a styling sheet? And if there is, what is it called? So we add a link or an element called link. We say that it's a style sheet. Give it the name of the file. Okay. And we tell it the type of file. Close it. And if we look at our web page, we should see what we put in there. Okay, so at this stage, you should all see something like this. You know, feel free to try other colors. I mean, it's as simple as changing the color. Like you could put blue, gray, black, purple, and then there's other other hues. The hues names get a bit complicated sometimes. You need to use hyphens and things. You can look it up online. But you know, it's as simple as just writing out the color if you want to change it. Okay, so on to the next step. HTML we covered. Now we want to get into the graphics, because ultimately where we want to get to at this workshop is, you know, to build graphics. We do that with SVG. HTML is it's clumsy to use HTML for graphics. I mean, it's possible, but it's really not easy to do. So SVG is a way to do it much easier. It uses the same structure as HTML. It's specific for graphics. You'll see that all the elements are basic shapes. So we'll be talking in terms of shapes. And the resolution is, you know, extremely high. So here's an example of the page, your HTML page that using SVG. So what we can do is simply add below the last paragraph that we added. So the way we work with SVG is we simply use the SVG tag. And then HTML knows that it's, you know, this is a SVG language. So in this case, we're going to draw well, first we're gonna specify the location of our shape. Okay, so we give it a width, and 200 px means 200 pixels. Pixels are the basic element of any graphic. Graphics are in pixels, and so we're working in pixels. And we're going to draw a circle. So the tag is a circle. With a coordinate of X at 100 pixels. And the coordinate at Y 100 pixels. We specify a radius of 100 pixels. And we're going to fill it with the color blue. Okay. And we need to make sure that we close our tag. So what we've done is that, as I mentioned throughout, is we give it the coordinates, right? We're giving the circle. These are the center of the circle, the X and Y coordinates, the radius of the circle, and we fill it up. And if I don't have any typos, then I should see a nice bright blue, royal blue circle come up on my web page. Okay. Now we can style it as well. So if we go into Atom, we go to our style style.css page. And we have a define a category that we're going to assign a color to. And so yeah, so I mean, if we're going to work with custom code in the HTML page, we assign in our styling sheet, we assign that area. There's a period in front of it. It's important to put that, and then we can define colors through by referencing this this tag in the styling sheet. One important thing to note is that the coordinates on a computer screen start at the top left. That's where the 0, 0 coordinate is. So when we draw graphics, we have to keep that in mind. And the Y positive coordinates actually go downwards. Which means that if we want, typically visually, we want the reverse, we want the Y positive to go upwards. That means we always have to do some scaling of some sort to make sure the data comes up or the picture comes up the right way. So this is just, for your information to keep it in mind. If you're getting a picture that's upside down, it's because of the coordinate system in the computer, in every computer. The SVG shapes that we can work with, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them. It's limitless, basically. You can do anything. There are some predefined ones. There's the rectangles, the circles, ellipses, lines, polylines, polygons, which means using polyline and polygon, you can draw any shape of any look. I'll give you an example where polyline is used. You know, whenever you go to a website and you see, let's say, a picture of like a country, and then with, like, for example, if you go to, you know, all those COVID pages, you know, if you go to the cbc.ca COVID page, and they show you each province and the country and the circles showing the cases and the number of open cases and closed cases, that is done with polyline. So I mean, the configuration of the provinces and all that is all done with polylines. That's an extreme example, but that's how it's done. So what we have so far is we have our simple web page using HTML. We've worked with some basic, very simple SVG. So you know the shapes that we put in the website, how to do that. But everything is static. So, you know, we had to basically program the colors and everything. It's all manually there, and it's static. It won't change unless we manually go in, change it, and save the file. So this is where D3 comes in, because D3 allows us to add the dynamics to the web page that we're looking for. Okay, so a little bit about D3. So it's a JavaScript library. So we make calls to functions, or we make calls to statements, and within those statements there are what we call methods. We'll talk a bit about that, and a lot of the tools within D3 are somewhat intuitive. Many of them are, but you know, as your application gets more and more complex, it gets a little less intuitive, but we will work through that. Another thing about error reporting, it's a little bit hard to spot errors in D3. I mean, D3, if D3 spots like, you know, a fatal error or something that, you know, it cannot execute, it just ignores it. Like, it's not super great at reporting or telling you there's an error and where it is and everything. You'll just see, oh, wait a minute, I wanted D3 to do this and it doesn't show on my screen. It's because probably it was the coding format was wrong and D3 just simply ignored it. And so it can get a bit tedious, but there are some ways to help troubleshoot the problems, which we'll look at. Okay, so how do you load D3 into your site? So the first thing is you go to your HTML page, and we load it as a script. So under the link, we open up a script tag, and we tell it the source. And it's basically D3, the library is located at this location. There is a way to download it and have it just run on your computer. You know, that's one way of doing it. The problem with doing it that way is that when there are revisions to the library, then you have to make sure you know, continuously go to the site and make sure you know about those changes. Whereas if you just access it this way, you're always sure to have, I mean, you're always sure that you're accessing the latest from this this file here. The disadvantage too is that if the internet's down, this won't work. So you know, that's another drawback. But just so you're aware, it's probably still the best way to do it, but you need to be aware of, you know, sometimes things happen. Well, what's going on? I'm not seeing what I expect. Could be the internet connection. Oops, sorry. Okay, hold on. Okay. All right. Okay. So in Atom, we need to do, so if we want to add D3, we need to do one thing. And so we need to create a new file. And the file is called, we will call it input.js. You can call it anything you want, but it has to have the JS extension. So the .js is mandatory. Input, you can change that if you like, because that's called within the HTML file anyway, as I show here. So if we go to the HTML page, so we go just above the closing of the body, and let's add these highlighted tags here. So we have a division, which will assign a tag, my text. So we're going to have text in this div statement, under this div statement. Then we'll add SVG statement. We're going to do some type of graph, and we'll give it, we'll reference it here in the HTML by my graph. And we're telling HTML that it's going to be SVG. And we're telling HTML that we're going to have a script. And it's called input.js. Save that. And so HTML now has all this information about what we're going to be doing. So we give these tags an ID, which we can call or reference in our other files. And then HTML will then interpret that and put it in the locations and in the formats that that we tell it. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. Okay, the script input.js just means there's a JS file that the HTML page is going to have to interpret. And by making the appropriate calls, it knows it's going to be D3 because of what we did up here at the top of the HTML page. Okay. So just some things to keep in mind is the IDs need to be unique. Okay, so every time you have a specific element like a specific area of text, object or whatnot, the ID needs to be unique. If you have a conflict of IDs, it's not gonna work well. And the input.js, where you're making your D3 calls, should always be at the bottom, right before the closing tag of the body. So at the bottom of the HTML code in the index.html page. Okay. So you should have 3 files right now. You should have index.html. You should have a styling page called style.css and a JavaScript page, or sorry, JavaScript file called input.js. So the index.html is where we do the text and structure. The style.css is the color and position of things. And the input.js is executable code. And that's where the D3 library resides. Okay, so let's start with a very simple application of D3. Going back to Atom, we're going into our input.js file, which should be empty at this stage. So we're going to make calls to D3. How do we do that? We do that by typing D3. And then when you want to select an element in HTML, here, if you recall the div ID my text element here, I have an area, a container, if you like, with which I'm saying is going to be text, and I give it the ID my text. I'm referencing this container as with the name my text. And what I'm doing in my input.js file is I'm telling D3 select that container this way. I'm selecting, I'm instructing D3 to select the container with the ID my text. And I'm telling it to append or add to, so add to that container paragraph. This is the same P as what we did earlier in HTML, except here it's D3. And then I'm going to say, add this text. Save that. And take a look at what I have. And I should see on my web page near the bottom, because that's where I put my tags, what D3 has just done. It created this hello dynamic world text. This is where the container is called my text. And I put it within a paragraph P, and I put the text hello dynamic world. This is what we see here. Okay. Now, why do you think it's red? It's not a default. It's because if you guessed that it's because in the style.css we had declared generally all P as being red, then you'd be right. That's why. Okay. So everything that'll go into a paragraph will be red by default. It's not an HTML default. It's because that's what we had put earlier in our style.css. Essentially, we talked about this, and it's always a good idea when you're writing D3. Like if you'll notice here, I did some indentation here, just to make sure it's clear. Like when you're selecting an element and everything within that element that you selected is indented, then I know that that's where you want to put the following items or containers or elements or text or objects or whatever. Indentation just makes it clear for the reader to see what are you trying to do with your with the code. Okay, so we can do dynamic shapes, going back to input. Thank you. I thought something was a bit off there. Is it because, yes, it's because I did not close my SVG, and the circle was, if you'll notice, it was in a weird place. I closed it, and now it's back to where I expected it. Thanks for that note. So let's, in input.js, I want to create my circle dynamically. So I'm going to go to input.js, and I'm going to select the mygraph container. Gave it that name earlier. And then I can give it some attributes. So I'm going to give it a width. (200 pixels). Another attribute, height. Oops, when you type it right. Or I could have just done a bunch of copy and paste, but there's the fun in that. So width, height, then I can append circle. Okay, so what am I doing here? I got a graph. I'm giving it a width and a height, right? And then I'm adding a circle. And then what I'm doing is to the circle, I'm giving it some attributes. Same attributes when we did SVG, if you'll notice, same thing. And we're going to fill it. This time, we're going to tell it to give it the pink color. Save this, and I should see a circle generated by D3 in a pink color. You can also try and put another color there just to see what happens, but I'm sure you will get the result you expected. So that's essentially in a very basic way how D3 works in conjunction with the index.html file, and how we create SVG graphics using D3. So because we're using parameters, and ultimately we're passing parameters through these methods like attr, append, and those are methods. We call those methods in coding language to D3. And within those methods, we're passing parameters, just like you pass parameters in a function. So you can imagine, you know, when you code, if you want to make it dynamic, you can change those parameters dynamically. That's a more advanced D3 application, but it's there for that. It'll totally allows you to do that. So before we had in HTML, we had this, and now we have this. Okay, the D3 code, where we set the attributes after selecting the container where we want to place the object, which is called my graph. We set the attributes, then we append the circle. Okay, so at this stage, let's see, I think
yeah, you were quite a bit faster than I expected.
Yeah, I guess you know, I could have maybe given everybody a little more time to go through. Does anybody have any questions? About what we've done so far?
So your web page actually looks slightly different from mine. Like I have hello dynamic world between the two circles. I'm not sure where your hello dynamic world is at the bottom there.
Okay, let's see. It's probably because there's something that's a good.
Also, your HTML is red, which probably means there's something wrong.
Yeah, why is that there? HTML. Why is it like that? The head, okay, body.
There's a typo.
Is there a typo?
Bracket. Oh yeah, HMTL.
Ah, yes. Who spotted that?
Raphael.
Excellent. Okay, so you can see where HTML is, okay, this is good because, you know, HTML is it like yours now, Jarno?
Nope, I have the text hello dynamic worlds between the two circles because that's where the div tag is. This is probably a good moment to show like the F12 key.
Yeah, so let's do that, F12.
Oh, in the browser, sorry.
In the browser, yeah. So here you can do F12, or you can just right click and do an inspect. We'll also, you know, if you want to see what's going on your web page, you can right click, do inspect, or F12. And then as you go through just wait, let me try and give myself some space there. So you will see how the page interpreted the code, right? And so as I go through my inspector, I know, okay, this is the body. This is the first paragraph, second paragraph, the SVG of the circle, and then the second one.
Oh, I see. So SVG is inside of the div, and that's not right.
Okay. So there we go. This closing one here.
Oh, the closing div is malformed for my text. You see?
Sorry, where did you put yours?
So if you look at
div
div
look
ID,
here, my div is wrong here. The div had a typo.
Yeah, there we go.
Now.
That's what I have.
Okay, so you know, the moral of the story here is, you know, HTML is somewhat forgiving. I mean, I mean, the results were there, but it wasn't in the right place. And you know, an example of, you know, how troubleshooting this can be, you know, sometimes a little bit. I mean, it's easy when you use the inspector, but I had a typo, which was a what did I have? I had two.
Yeah,
Right.
I think it's smaller than slash and then smaller than again, something like that.
Yeah, and no, anyway, it was. I mean, it looked like it would, if this would have been any other language, it would have been a complete violation of the, I mean, standard of the structure, allowable structure, and the code probably wouldn't have executed in many other languages. But HTML is very forgiving. But when your tags are wrong for placing things, it's just things will get misplaced, and you wonder why. And sometimes it's just because the tag opening or the closing tag is wrong. And in this case, a good example of that was my closing tag was incorrect and it misplaced one of my texts. So, you know, that's just one thing that you kind of have to be careful of with this language, with this programming technique. So as I mentioned before, like you could change the color to whatever you want here, like it could be cyan, and as soon as you save the file, then it's dynamic. It changes, the web page will update automatically. As I mentioned before, you can choose any color you want here, and you usually just type it out, and that's the color that will show. So W3, the maintainers. Yeah, okay, great. So another thing, while we're on the topic, since we're in the coding side of things, then I'd like to just mention, when you're doing your JavaScript, if you want to comment lines, it's a double /. And I strongly suggest that you comment when we get into this more in depth. Like in the next workshop, we're going to actually be working with data sets, and you know, your program can get quite involved, sometimes quite complex. So it's always a good idea to comment the program. So a single line is a double /. And if you have lots of text, you can do a // star, and then you know, this would kind of like be a paragraph of comments. But then you have to close comment when you do it that way. So if it's just a line, you can do a double /. You don't have to close the comment for it to, but it's just one line. If you have multiple lines, it's /*, but you got to close the comment with a star /. I highly recommend that you always comment your programs. It's a very good practice. Okay. So what we can do for the remaining time is, those of you that still have time on this call, we wanted to leave you with you know, an exercise that you can try by yourself. You can start it right now during the remaining 20-25 minutes of the workshop. So instead of doing a circle in D3, try and do a rectangle. And we did using the SVG oh no, we didn't do a rectangle in this one, did we? We just did the circle. Okay, so doing the using the analogy for the circle, you can try and do a rectangle in D3 and see how that works for you. One thing you can try is to try doing it in SVG first, and then once you successfully do it in SVG, then you can do it with D3. That's what I would recommend as an approach to get there. It just helps you to page 23. Yeah, it also helps you to figure out the D3 if you're not familiar with it, to see how to do it in SVG first. It'll be more intuitive after to do it in D3. Yeah. Yeah, so if you go to the link on page 23, the link on page 23 basically gives you a lot of good information how to do that. So once you do that with just basic SVG, then try and do it in D3 and see how that works for you.
Yeah, so any questions about all the stuff Peter discussed so far?
Yeah.
This was really great. Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Jarno.
Yeah.
If there aren't any questions, I'll just do my second reminder that there's a follow-up session next week. And so if you haven't registered, do be sure to do that online. And just thank you both. This was really, really informative and really clear and so easy to follow. And I think I said this earlier in the chat, but I believe, Jarno, you do send out the link to the video afterwards, and I'll be posting it too. So, so you'll have a couple of ways to access it if you want to go over all of this again.
Yeah. And next time we'll do the dynamic data part. So we'll get to the data loading.
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
All right. Well, thanks, Peter.
All right. Well, thank you. And yeah, we'll see you next Monday.
Thank you,
Exactly.
everybody, for joining.
All right. Thanks.
Bye-bye.